There is a moment that defines power more than any speech or explanation. It happens the instant someone calls you out, questions your worth, or accuses you of something you didn't do. Most people panic in that moment. They rush to defend themselves, desperate to prove their innocence. They say, "That's not what I meant," or "You misunderstood me," or "I'm not like that." But here's the brutal truth. Defending yourself rarely convinces anyone. It doesn't restore your reputation. It doesn't make you look stronger. What it does is shift control away from you and into the hands of your accuser. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He observed that the man who defends himself lowers himself, while the man who refuses to defend forces the world to question the accuser instead. Perception, not truth, is what decides power. The moment you flinch, the crowd smells blood. Carl Jung, though speaking from psychology rather than politics, echoed this principle in his own way. He wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." When you defend yourself, you are not really protecting truth, you are protecting your ego, which fears exposure. And the ego, as Jung reminded us, is not the whole self but a fragile mask. When you defend, you enter their frame. You accept that they have the authority to question you. And once you play on their field, you've already lost. Even if your defense is logical, the fact that you felt the need to explain makes you look guilty, uncertain, or weak. Now compare that to silence. Think of the most powerful people you've ever met. They were not the ones shouting the loudest, but the ones who could hold stillness like a weapon. The ones who let accusations hang unanswered until the accusers started to doubt themselves. The ones who turned the tension of silence into a mirror, making their opponents look desperate and unstable. Nietzsche once wrote, "Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed." When you remain silent, you don't just withhold defense. You withhold validation of their illusion. You force others to sit in their own discomfort, to wrestle with their own insecurity. This is not passivity, it is strategy. Power is not about being understood, it is about being untouchable. Defensiveness says, "I care what you think of me." Silence says, "I am beyond your reach." But silence alone is not enough. The real art is inversion, turning the attack back on the attacker. Not by countering with anger or justification, but by calm detachment. If someone calls you manipulative, you don't argue. You look at them steadily and say, "If that's how you see it." You don't fight their frame, you let them drown in it. In that moment, they begin to wonder if they overstepped. They replay their words in their head. They wonder if they look insecure, bitter, or unstable. And the more they scramble to explain themselves, the more they shrink in front of everyone. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." To stand silent in the face of accusation is exactly that. It is acceptance. You are saying, "I don't need to explain. I know who I am." And in that self-acceptance lies an aura that cannot be touched by criticism. The world teaches you to defend your reputation, to fight for your name, to prove your innocence. But Machiavelli saw the trap. He knew that the moment you fight for innocence, you admit guilt. And Jung saw the deeper danger. You become enslaved to the opinions of others instead of being free in your own truth. The strongest person is not the one who wins arguments. It is the one who no longer needs to argue at all. The one whose stillness unsettles others more than any speech could. The one who controls the frame by refusing to step into it. So remember this: he who explains submits. He who remains calm forces others to reveal themselves. And the man who refuses to defend himself becomes something far more powerful than innocent. He becomes untouchable. Every confrontation is less about facts and more about frames. The frame is the lens through which the audience sees the exchange. Who is calm, who is rattled, who is in control. And whoever controls the frame controls the outcome. When you defend yourself, you surrender the frame. You accept their authority to question you. You confirm their narrative simply by responding to it. Even if you are right, the crowd sees you reacting, explaining, lowering yourself to meet the accusation. Machiavelli knew this long before modern psychology. He observed that once you explain, you are no longer leading, you are following. Silence, on the other hand, refuses the invitation to step into their story. It forces the other person to fill the silence with their own insecurity. Carl Jung once said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Defending yourself assumes there is one truth everyone must agree on. But power is not about convincing others of your truth. It is about holding your ground so firmly that others begin to question their own. Think about this. You walk into a room and someone throws shade, subtle or direct. Everyone turns, waiting for your reply. If you rush to explain, the attack lands. If you smirk, pause, or say nothing, the frame flips. The room is no longer asking whether the insult was true. They are asking why you are so composed. Nietzsche once observed, "He who has a strong enough why can bear almost any how." Your why is the quiet core that makes you unshakable. When you respond from that center with silence or calm inversion, you show that your stability does not depend on their approval. There is also the tactic of inversion. Instead of defending, you let their attack collapse on itself. Someone calls you arrogant. You don't argue. You tilt the frame and say, "Strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable." Now the spotlight shifts. They look insecure for even raising the accusation while you stand untouched. Jung believed that projection is the unconscious at work. He taught that what we dislike in others often reflects what we have denied in ourselves. When someone accuses you with intensity, they often reveal more about their shadow than about your character. By staying silent or by calmly inverting, you let them expose themselves. In business, this principle is especially powerful. Picture a meeting where someone undermines your idea with a jab. Most people rush to prove their plan. But the Machiavellian move is to pause, lean back, and simply say, "Let's hear your strategy then." Now the pressure flips. They must perform under scrutiny while you remain still, composed, and elevated. In personal relationships, the same law applies. A partner says, "You don't care about me anymore." Most people panic, offering explanations, promises, desperate reassurances. But when you stay grounded and respond simply, "That's not how I see it," you take control of the emotional tempo. And whoever controls the tempo controls the frame. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." The attack is an outside event. Your silence, your calm inversion, your refusal to flinch, that is power over your mind. And the audience, whether it is one person or an entire room, feels it immediately. The brilliance of silence and inversion is that they make others overplay. The more they repeat themselves, the more desperate they look. The more emotional they become, the more composed you appear. Without lifting a finger, you have turned their sword back onto them. Remember this: words are rarely about truth, they are about control. If you try to clarify, you step into fog, always chasing, never leading. If you stay silent, you let them drown in their own performance. If you invert, you turn their weakness into your strength. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And part of becoming who you are is refusing to let others define you through their accusations. Your silence is not emptiness, it is definition. Your calm is not avoidance, it is mastery. And your refusal to defend is not weakness, it is control of the frame. So when you are attacked, remember, the strong do not explain. They hold stillness, they redirect. They let the weight of words collapse back onto the speaker. And in that moment, you are no longer just defending yourself. You are rewriting the field of power itself. In a world where voices are amplified by technology, accusations spread faster than truth. A rumor can reach thousands before you even know it exists. And in that arena, the instinct to defend yourself grows almost irresistible. But the paradox is clear: the louder you try to defend, the weaker you look. Machiavelli understood this before social media was ever conceived. He taught that power is not about clarifying what is true, but about shaping what others believe. And in the theater of public opinion, silence, composure, and framing speak louder than long explanations ever could. Carl Jung warned, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." When you rush to explain yourself, you are not defending truth. You are feeding the audience's hunger for drama. You are joining the performance instead of standing above it. Consider how a public figure reacts when attacked. Some panic, posting long explanations, tearful apologies, endless clarifications. But notice how the strongest figures often remain composed, issuing only a few words, or none at all. And strangely, their silence commands more attention than paragraphs ever could. The reason is psychological. When you do not defend, people project. They fill the silence with their own fears, assumptions, and interpretations. And most often they overestimate your strength. Your mystery becomes your shield. Nietzsche once said, "It is not the truth that matters, but the conviction." In the public arena, conviction often outweighs fact. If you appear calm, untouchable, and certain, people assume you are in control, even if lies swirl around you. If you appear frantic, desperate, or emotional, they assume you are guilty no matter what you say. This does not mean you must remain passive. There are 3 strategies that carry power without defense: silence, reframing, and precision cuts. Silence is the simplest and the hardest. It leaves your accuser exposed, forces them to overplay, and shifts attention to their instability. Reframing takes the accusation and inverts it into strength. Your manipulative becomes, "Only people who can't influence others say that." Your arrogant becomes, "Strange how confidence unsettles the insecure." Precision cuts are short, final phrases that end the conversation without opening new doors. Noted, "Think what you like. Time will tell." These responses are not defenses. They are signals of status. They do not beg to be believed. They declare that belief is irrelevant. Jung believed that projection is everywhere in human interaction. What people accuse you of often reveals more about them than about you. When you do not defend, you give them the space to reveal their shadow in public. The longer they push, the more they expose themselves. Imagine being in a meeting where someone undermines you with a sarcastic jab. Most people tense up, laugh nervously, or try to smooth things over. But the Machiavellian move is different. You pause, you hold stillness, you let the silence bite. Maybe you add one calm line, "Interesting take." Now the attention shifts. The attacker begins to look petty, while you look composed and above the noise. The same applies online. A critic tries to bait you into a defensive rant. If you explain, you feed them. If you ignore them, they spiral, trying harder, looking obsessed. And the more emotional they appear, the more your calm silence elevates you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." When you remain unbothered, the world interprets your calm as strength. When you defend frantically, the world interprets your distress as weakness. The key is to shift your mindset. Do not aim to be understood, aim to be untouchable. Do not seek approval, project authority. Do not defend, define. Because the crowd is never really listening to the accusation. They are watching the exchange of energy. They are studying who looks composed and who looks rattled. And in that theater, stillness is louder than speech. Jung once reminded us, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Part of that privilege is refusing to let others drag you into their emotional storms. When you remain steady, You show that your self-respect is stronger than their judgment. And when the storm passes, you are the one still standing. So hold this truth. Power in the face of criticism does not come from being right. It comes from being unshaken. And the one who does not flinch becomes, in the eyes of all, the one who cannot be touched. Most people obsess over having a good reputation. They want to be seen as kind, honest, respectable, agreeable. But Machiavelli knew that a good reputation is fragile. It requires constant defense, endless clarification, and the approval of people who change their opinions daily. What truly matters is not a good reputation but a strong one. A strong reputation is not about being liked. It is about being untouchable. It is not built on constant defense but on presence, on aura, on the way silence itself makes people hesitate before challenging you. Carl Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." When you accept yourself, you no longer scramble to fix every rumor or correct every insult. Your power no longer depends on being seen as good, because your center does not rest in the shifting judgment of others. That self-acceptance radiates outward as aura, an energy people feel before you even speak. Think about the people who carry weight in a room without saying a word. They walk in and attention shifts. They sit silently, and others adjust their tone. They do not need to prove themselves because their presence already sets the frame. Nietzsche once said, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster." And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. The aura you project shapes how others see themselves in your presence. If you appear defensive, they feel powerful. If you remain still and grounded, they feel unsettled, as if they are looking into a depth they cannot measure. This is the essence of aura. It is not about how loud you speak, but how little you need to. It is not about chasing admiration, but about making others question whether they can afford to cross you. Jung described this as individuation, the integration of the shadow, the persona, and the deeper self. When you stop denying your darker aspects and accept them as part of your wholeness, you project an energy that cannot be easily shaken. Others feel it without knowing why. They sense there is more to you than meets the eye, and that mystery is power. A fragile reputation collapses the moment it is attacked. A strong aura grows stronger the more it is tested. When people accuse you and you do not react, your silence becomes myth. They wonder what you know, what you could say, what you might do if you chose to. Their imagination does more work than your words ever could. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." Living begins when you stop performing for approval and start embodying presence. You stop living in defense and start living in definition. Your aura defines you long before your explanations ever could. Reputation built on goodness makes you dependent on constant validation. Reputation built on strength makes you independent of it. The first enslaves you to public opinion. The second frees you from it. A strong reputation is not always clean or polished. It may even invite criticism, suspicion, or envy, but no one dares to dismiss it, because strength commands caution in a way goodness never can. So let this be clear. Your goal is not to be understood, but to be felt. Not to be loved by all, but to be respected by those who matter. Not to silence every rumor, but to cultivate an aura that makes words dissolve before they land. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And when you become who you truly are, you no longer live for a fragile reputation. You embody a presence so certain, so unbothered, that your silence speaks louder than defense ever could. In the end, people may not always like you, but they will think twice before moving against you. And that hesitation, that aura, is the truest form of reputation. The ultimate stage of power is not winning arguments, silencing critics, or even mastering the art of inversion. It is when you no longer need to defend at all, when your presence alone carries more weight than words, when your calm certainty makes explanations unnecessary. Carl Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." Defensiveness is always tied to what has already happened, to accusations, to misunderstandings, to the stories others tell about you. But presence is about what you choose now. It says, "I do not live in reaction. I define the moment." Think of the rare individuals who never explain themselves. They don't write long justifications, they don't argue with critics, they don't panic when attacked. And yet, people respect them more. Why? Because silence creates myth. It invites imagination. And in that void, people project strength onto you. Nietzsche once said, "It is not the strength, but the duration of great sentiments that makes great men." Power is not about occasional flashes of defiance, but about the steady aura of someone who cannot be rattled. Over time, that consistency builds a reputation far stronger than any defense ever could. Most people live trapped in the court of public opinion. They explain, they clarify, they beg to be understood. But when you cross the line into true presence, you leave that court behind. You no longer seek a verdict because you no longer recognize their authority to judge you. Jung observed, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And when you embody that truth, you don't need applause or approval. You don't need to correct every lie or chase every rumor. You simply live so completely in your own definition that explanations become irrelevant. Presence is more than silence. It is composure in every detail. The way you hold your gaze, the calmness in your posture, the steadiness of your tone. People feel it before you speak, and because they cannot easily read you, they hesitate. Their caution becomes your shield. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." To defend desperately is to mirror the insecurity of your accuser. To remain still, defined only by yourself, is to rise above the game entirely. It is to stand on ground they cannot reach. This is the difference between strength and immunity. Strength still reacts. It pushes back, it argues, it explains. Immunity does not even acknowledge the strike. And immunity is where true power lives. Imagine being accused and saying nothing. Imagine being insulted and smiling calmly. Imagine being attacked and simply letting the storm pass without lifting a finger. At first, it feels unnatural. But the more you practice, the more you realize that the silence is not emptiness, it is dominance. Because while others exhaust themselves trying to provoke you, you remain untouched. Jung believed that integration of the self means no longer being split apart by external judgment. You are not pulled into reaction because you know the shadow within and have made peace with it. No insult surprises you because you have already faced it in yourself. And when you carry that acceptance, you become unshakable. So let this be the final truth. Power is not in proving innocence, but in embodying presence. Not in defending, but in defining. Not in reacting, but in being. When you no longer defend yourself, you stop being someone who can be put on trial. You rise above the court of public opinion and live in a higher court, the one you hold within. And in that space, your silence is not weakness, but the loudest statement you could ever make. Power is no longer effort. It becomes aura. A presence so secure, so certain, that accusations evaporate before they even land. And those who try to shake you end up crumbling under the weight of their own instability. The final evolution of strength is this: your existence itself is the defense. No words needed, no arguments fought, no approval required. Only presence. And presence, when held with calm certainty, is untouchable.